Wow, this is a great turnout. I really appreciate y'all coming out today. I was just talking to Frank about how this, to me, exemplifies what we call the GRCC experience. That you get the feel and the experience of a university here in a community college environment. And I just really appreciate the efforts of Frank and everybody who puts together this series. It's a real tribute to the college, and I thank you for coming out today for it. I'm curious, how many of you came out today because you're interested in psychology primarily? Raise the hands, a lot of people. How many people came out today because you're interested in landing a job? Okay. Are there other reasons that people came out today? Extra credit. Okay. Okay, that's fine. Now, I'm glad you mentioned that. Now, I do, if you are from Amanda Brand's class, I have a sign-in sheet. And at the end of the session, if you would come up and sign next to your name, I will make sure that this gets back to Amanda. If you have some other system that you need my signature, I'll be around after the session and would be happy to give you my autograph for that. So we'll take care of that. So great. So let me see if I can get this on slideshow really quick, since I've got all the nice PowerPoint effects that we like to have. So I want to talk to you today about finding, landing, and thriving in a job that you love. And I love to quotes, and so I'll start out with some quotes. One from Tennyson: "Brief is life, but love is long." Think about that quote. What does it mean to you? Okay, I always wanted to give a lecture involving love, and this is really like the first opportunity I have to speak to love, okay? I think about that, I think, life is brief, and you come to realize that the older you get. It gets briefer and briefer. But the product of love is what lasts. And the experience of love is what makes life rich and meaningful. And those times when we're experiencing love are kind of timeless. Okay? And so love is something to aspire to in all venues. Okay? Not just in our relationships, but also in our work that we do. Okay? A little more contemporary quote here. "All you need is love." Okay, Lennon and McCartney. That speaks to the importance of love. And love applies to so many things. Okay, so just an outline of what I plan on talking about today. I'm going to start out and talk about industrial organizational psychology. I'm an industrial organizational psychologist, and I think that one of the purposes of this speaker series is to expose students to the many different subdisciplines that exist in psychology. You may, when you think of a psychologist, think about a therapist with a client on the couch, asking questions over and over again. But there's many different forms of psychology. And industrial organizational psychology is actually a fairly prominent discipline in psychology. That's what I'm trained in. I'd like you to learn a little more about that. We'll address the question, can you love a job? It was something that I was kind of thinking about, in this presentation is, I know you can love a person, okay? There's many people that I love. One of the most important, my wife in the back row there. Love you, honey. But can you love a job? And some of you might wonder that, maybe you think, I haven't had a job yet that I love. Okay, well, maybe you've had a form of love. Okay, maybe it's not what we would think of as a consummate love, but maybe a different form of love. But let's explore that question. And then I want to get into just talking about some practical tips about how you can find a job that you'll love. How once you get that interview, that call, that you can land a job that you love. And once you're in that job, how can you experience it, thrive in that job, and experience love for your job in the long term? And I'll wrap up with a summary, and there'll be plenty of time for questions at the end. But of course, anytime you have a question or a comment, I'm very happy to address that in the moment. So, but with so many people here, you'll have to raise your hand and maybe clear your throat if I don't see your hand up at first. But feel free to ask a question at any time. Okay. So what is industrial organizational psychology? Well, it's the application of psychological principles to the workplace. And the workplace can be anywhere that people work. It can be, the office like you see on TV. But it could be a construction site. It could be a space station. It could be anywhere that people come together and work. And we try and apply psychology to help people to do their jobs better and to help organizations to function better. So we help employers treat employees more fairly. We help make jobs more interesting and satisfying for people. We help workers to be more productive. So specifically, what does that involve? Well, industrial organizational psychologists design systems and implement systems to analyze jobs, where we look at what does a person do and what are the human characteristics, the knowledge, the skills, the abilities that they need in order to do those tasks, so that we can help organizations to recruit and to select the best people to do those jobs. We design systems for organizations to evaluate performance. Just as your performance is evaluated in your classes through tests and grades that you get, that doesn't end when you graduate. It continues on into your work life, and you are evaluated. And so industrial organizational psychologists are involved in setting up systems that are fair for making those kinds of evaluations. We develop the competencies of people through training. We improve the functioning of work groups by building teams and training people to work together effectively. We assess the attitudes and perceptions of people at work through interviews and surveys, and we feed that information back into organizations so that they know what kinds of adjustments should be made to make work more satisfying and to have employees be more committed to the organization and its mission. We motivate employees. We design compensation systems that people will find motivating. We help organizations to change and introduce new changes. And that in today's work environment is a lot of the work that we're doing. There's a lot of change going on, and people don't necessarily like to change. We're creatures of habit, okay? For good reason. I always like to say breathing is an important habit that we have, okay? My heartbeat is an important habit, but sometimes we have to change. And so industrial organizational psychologists help organizations and people to adjust to changes. So as I was thinking about, how did I get to be an industrial organizational psychologist? And I was kind of going over all of the jobs I've had. How did I get here? Which of these jobs did I love? I thought it'd be interesting to see here. Oh, I'm sorry. I need to go back here before I go into that. Just a little bit more on how do you get to be an industrial organizational psychologist? Well, it takes some amount of graduate training. As Frank mentioned, I have my PhD, but you could also stop at a master's degree and still get gainful employment as an industrial organizational psychologist. And it's a very versatile type of career path. You see industrial organizational psychologists in all segments of the economy. You see it in government work, in the Department of Labor, in other government agencies. You see industrial organizational psychologists inside large corporations. So as I was getting my training, I worked at Sears Roebuck and Company, helping them to design human resource systems. You see industrial organizational psychologists as academics, both in psychology departments, but also in business schools, in management departments. So the great thing about this type of career path is that it is very versatile. It provides you with options. And that's an important thing, again, in this type of economy. It's something that I've found very useful in my career. If you're interested in learning more about industrial organizational psychology, there is a division of the American Psychological Association, Division 14, which is the Society for Industrial Organizational Psychology. And it's a real simple website, www.siop.org. And this is a great website. It has lots of educational information. You can see job postings for industrial organizational psychologists. Like if I was going to actually pursue this, what kind of job would I get? There's journals that are posted up there. They have a list of all the graduate programs in the United States. And so if it's something that you're interested in, you can certainly ask me questions, but this is also a great site to look at. Okay, so back to me. No, my career path, how did I get here? How did I get to be an industrial organizational psychologist? What are all the different jobs that I had in my life? How many of them did I love? And it was kind of surprising. Some of them, as I look back, I said, yeah, I really love that job, okay? Started out as a gopher for my dad. And this probably started at a very young age. My dad had apartments all over the north side of Toledo, and it was, Steve, go get me a Phillips wrench or a Phillips head screwdriver. Go get me a vice grips. Go take this chalk line over there and hold it while we, so we make this right cut, okay? Then I evolved on to being a newspaper deliverer. Okay, this was somewhere. This I would say it was not a job that I had a consummate level of love for. I liked the money, but Toledo, Ohio, February, delivering newspapers, not necessarily the funnest job in the world. Moved on from there to my first entree into entrepreneurship. That was being a lawnmower and a snow shoveler. So I used to love days like last week, or was it the week before when we had the big blizzard? That was a big money day, Go out with your snow shovel, door to door. How much can you land in a day? We'd go out with some buddies, okay? As I got a little older, I was a maintenance assistant at an office building, okay? At 16, I could work officially, on the books, and became a McDonald's cook. Then I moved on to where my friends worked at Big Boy, okay? I'll talk about later the importance of having friends at work, And so I enjoyed Big Boy much more than McDonald's, okay? And then I moved on to being an undergraduate student, okay? And this is important point I want to make, is that when I got to be a student, it might have taken me a year or so into it, but at some point I realized, oh wait, my career has begun. I may not be being paid at this moment, but my career has begun. I'm going to start getting recommendations. The work that I'm doing is stuff that I want to put on my resume if I want to go to that next step. Okay? So all of you who are students here, if you don't think that your career has begun, think again. It has begun, and the things that you're doing now are the things that you can put on a resume and that you will be marketing yourself. Okay? You are investing in yourself. You're investing time, you're investing money, and you need to make the most of that investment. So how can the things that you're doing here pay off in your first job? Do you know what your resume, what you want it to look like in 3 years? Have you seen a resume of someone who has the job that you want to get? Maybe you should get that resume. And maybe you need to start doing those things now. Volunteering or working or crafting your resume, even as you are a student. Okay, so your career has begun. But like many people, I had to work while my career had begun. So I was a dormitory security attendant. That was fun, to be on campus on a Saturday night and let the people come into the dormitory and check them to see if, you know, they actually belonged there, if they could actually walk a straight line. I mean, most of them couldn't at that point. Oh gosh, go on, get past me. I was a Pizza Hut cook. Actually, I was a Pizza Hut cook more than once. Again, I liked it better when I was out in Seattle because I had friends at work. Okay, importance of friends at work. I was a deli delivery driver here. I loved this job. This was a consummate type of love with this job. It was about the deli that I worked with. It was a family-owned deli, and they treated me like one of the family. And they gave me responsibility, a growing amount of responsibility. And I took pride in my work. I loved to create a great sandwich and go out and deliver it to people. And they were so happy when they got it at 2 a.m. on a Saturday. They loved seeing me. It was a great job. I loved that. So that was a job where, again, you know, I didn't have my PhD. I didn't have my bachelor's degree. You know, I had my high school diploma, but that job I loved. And it wasn't because I got paid a lot. It was because the people I worked with, it was because my bosses had faith in me and wanted me to continue improving. That's what made me love that job. Gas station cashier, I hated that job. That was terrible. That was the third shift gas station attendant, okay? And a lot of these college examples involve alcohol. This was, people would come in 4 o'clock in the morning and want to buy beer. And I'd be like, you can't buy beer at 4 o'clock in the morning. Tell that to someone who's drunk, okay? Not fun. So that was probably like 2 months I was in that job, okay? And then I graduated, okay? Bachelor's degree in hand. Dad says, come out to Seattle, okay? Live with me. This was the summer of 1991, okay? Started out as a political canvasser, okay? These are all 1991, 1992. Moved on to be an industrial painter's assistant. Moved on to be a temporary laborer. Then I was a telemarketer and a caretaker to the developmentally disabled. 5 jobs in 1 year out in Seattle from the summer of 1991 to the summer of 1992. Um, I can't say I really loved any of those jobs. It was an interesting time. I was reflecting on it. It was a time when the country was in recession. It wasn't as bad as the recession we're experiencing now. This is really bad. But it was pretty bad then. I had a bachelor's degree. I thought, hey, I'm hot stuff, okay? And my first job, I thought, well, I was idealistic, okay? That 1991, this was for healthcare reform. I wanted to go out and change the world, and we wanted universal health care, going door to door. That was a tough job, okay? I was engaged in that job. I was focused. I was passionate. I was committed to the cause and to the organization. I was not that good at that job. That was the one job that I was fired from, that I could, in my whole career. And it was the nicest firing of all time. They were so nice to me. They were like, you know, Steve, we really like you. You're a great guy, but you're not making any money. You're here to raise money. Okay, so, and I accepted. They had a nice party for me that night. It was all these kind of hippie people, you know. They were all really good. It was like you had to be a real good hippie. It was frustrating to me. Like it was the people. The guy with the dreadlocks would go out and raise $500 in 2 hours and spend the rest of the day sipping coffee. And there I was going door to door trying at 8 hours, and I wouldn't get $200 out of the whole thing. But some jobs, you know, we're just not inclined to do. To me, it was a valuable job. It helped me to learn to communicate. It helped me to get out of my shell. And so while it was not a successful job, I took it as a success. I took what I got from it to be successful. I'm happy I had that job. I just wasn't good at it, okay? My parents used to tell me, Steve, you can do anything you want, okay? And I thought that was true until sometime in high school when, you know, I wasn't making the starting lineup on the basketball team. And I thought, well, there goes my dream of being in the NBA. Now, maybe I should have been like Michael Jordan and kept at it, okay? But I don't know. I think I was on to something. And probably Michael Jordan knew something, that he had more talent. And I knew I didn't have that talent, okay? So I think it's a great sentiment that you can do anything that you want. We shouldn't stop telling our children that you can do anything you want. But we're grown up here. Okay, we're not going to talk about Santa Claus. There's some things we're going to do better than other things. There's some things that we're more suited to do than other things. And as you think about your career, you've got to start identifying those things. And there's tons of things that you can do. And the whole world of work is changing drastically. Okay, there's new jobs that never existed before. Social network engineer. Okay, but you need to start figuring these things out. It's a complicated thing. We'll talk a little bit about that. So 91 to 92, back to graduate school, 1 year. And my dad says, do you really want to keep doing this? I said, no, Dad, I think I'm going to go to graduate school. And that drove me back to graduate school. Again, you know you're in your career as a graduate student. You should know it as an undergraduate. And there you are in your career, because as a graduate student, at least in psychology, you typically get a job along with that. They give you a job as a research assistant and a teaching assistant, and it covers your tuition. They pay for your tuition, and then they give you a little stipend. A little stipend. You know, you can afford an apartment and ramen noodles. And then you still get student loans, and you end up paying them until you're well into your 40s like me. But great experience, okay? At the end of that, I started to get into the work of IO psychology, okay? So I was an HR assessment specialist, worked at Sears Roebuck and Company, the corporate headquarters. I'll talk later about how you should go out and pursue work in the organization you dream of working at. I dreamed of working at Sears because they had a program in IO psychology. They had the great IO psychologists working there. I saw him talk, and I went up after a talk, and I said, I want to work with you. And they said, hey, guess what? We were just thinking about hiring an intern. Why don't you give us your name? And I got that job. Okay, question? Absolutely. So I think that all of my jobs influenced me in terms of the person that I am. And some of it is just learning the discipline of work and to showing up on time. Some of it is learning how to interact with customers and to please people, okay? And so I think, again, we should approach our work, our life, as a learning experience and take what we can learn from it to grow. And I think that I learned from each one of those jobs, even though really, if you talked about me being an IO psychologist, it started with me being a grad student, a research teaching assistant. This is where this career started in my specialty. But all of these things, and especially in this field, I always started to wonder about work. Like at McDonald's, they had these complex systems for when you should flip the burger over. And I just found that fascinating. Who thought this up? You know, a timer for when you're going to flip the burger, when you're going to put the cheese on. I'm like, beep, 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 put the cheese on. Oh, got to turn around, put the buns in the toaster. It was all programmed for you. And I thought, wow, that's fascinating. Isn't that cool? And I started thinking, well, and I think that got me into the psychology of work. I don't know, did that answer your question? Do you want to follow up? Okay, if you want to follow up later, we can do that. After this, I had a decision to make. Do I want to go into a corporate job or consulting? But I always had a dream of teaching. And so I got a job at Central Michigan University. I was there for 10 years as an assistant and an associate professor. After about 10 years, I got married. And my wife and I talked about, do we want to keep living in Mount Pleasant, Michigan for the rest of our lives? And Mount Pleasant, Michigan's a fine place to live, okay? But I wanted to live somewhere else. And I saw this job at Grand Rapids Community College come open, and I thought, wow, that's a fascinating job, being the executive director of organizational learning. Sounds like a great job. Was fortunate enough to get this job, and that's where I am today. Okay, so there's a career path. I know it's kind of self-centered, I hope, but I hope it gets into that. Part of the point is that it takes a long time. There's a long time in between here and there. And, when I was a McDonald's cook, I never dreamed that I would be a professor. No one dreamed that I would be a professor. Believe me, no one dreamed. When I went back to my high school reunion, they're like, we're surprised you're not in jail. Like, oh. So, be patient. Be patient with yourself. And relish in those surprises in life. It's interesting the turns that can take. Can you love a job? How many people think you can love a job here? Most people? Oh, good. That's interesting. Some people are like, I don't know, maybe I can love a job, You've probably heard of people being married to their work, okay? And that might be someone who's a workaholic, okay? I thought about this. I was watching Frank's presentation last year here. He was talking about the psychology of love. What does it mean to love? I mean, there's a great question. And actually, that's a question that's been addressed in psychology. What does it mean to love? And so Frank presented Robert Sternberg's triangular theory of love last year and talked about this. And I thought, well, does that apply to loving your work? Okay, let's review some of Sternberg's theories. Sternberg said that love has basically three components that's made up with it. It's liking the person. Okay, so we're talking about loving another person. Do you like them? Do they have characteristics that are pleasing to you? Do they do things that you like? Do you like being around that person? Okay. There's commitment. Okay. So, some people that we love, there's usually kind of a natural progression towards commitment, even before you're married. Okay. There's a phase of commitment, and there's passion. Okay. That there's this infatuation, there's this drive. Oh, this person just, they just capture my eye. I must be with this person. It's this feeling that we can't quench. And what Sternberg says is that we don't necessarily experience all of these things at once, but maybe we do. And sometimes in a relationship, it evolves what type of love that we're feeling. For the same person, we may, sometimes we like them, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we feel passionate about that person, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we're committed to the person, sometimes we aren't. Be careful with that one, okay? Honey, I'm always committed, okay? So what Sternberg said is that there's different types of love, okay? When we are passionate about the person and we like them, but we're not necessarily committed, that's a romantic love. This is often the early stages of love, okay? I like the person, they've got a great personality, they're really hot, wow, they kind of make my heels click. I'm passionate about that person. That's a romantic type of love. Now, oftentimes it evolves into adding that commitment, okay? And sometimes there's a love where you like the person and you're committed to them, but you're not necessarily passionate about that person. Sometimes this is a kind of love we go in and out of, okay? In that, maybe a couple that's been married for 30 years may not necessarily feel passion. Sometimes that passion is rekindled. Okay? That's a companionate love. Okay? Here's an interesting kind of love, fatuous love. Does anybody know what the word fatuous means? Anybody? It's kind of foolish. A foolish love. If you're passionate about someone and committed to them, but you really don't like them, that's kind of foolish. But come on, I know some of you out there have experienced this, okay? You really think that person's hot, okay? And you're really committed, but you don't really like them. They're kind of a jerk. They really don't do much for you, but they're hot. Okay? That's a fatuous love. I think what most of us want, and what I think Sternberg would say is the penultimate form of love, is a consummate love, where we like the person, we're passionate about the person, and we're committed to the person. So, does this apply to jobs? That's the question. And after watching Frank's presentation, I thought, well, I bet you it does. I think it does. Because there's a lot of variables or constructs in IO psychology that correspond to these variables. Okay? First of all, job satisfaction. Do I like my job? So this is something that we measure as IO psychologists, usually through surveys. Do I like my job? And so what I'll show you are items from a survey called the Job Descriptive Index, very popular job satisfaction measure. So do I like the work itself? Is it interesting and pleasant? Is it frustrating? Is it respected by others? Okay, we either respect it or we don't. Okay, obviously it's more satisfying if it's interesting, pleasant, and respected, and less satisfying if it's frustrating. Okay? Do we like the supervisor. Is the supervisor intelligent, quick-tempered? Do they know the job well? Are they lazy? Okay? Obviously, if our supervisor is quick-tempered and lazy, we're going to be less satisfied with our job. If they are intelligent and knows their job well, we're going to be more satisfied with our job. What about our coworkers? Are they loyal, boring, work well together, stupid? Okay? Less satisfied with those boring, stupid coworkers. These are actual items on a survey. I didn't make this up. Okay? More satisfied with the loyal, working well together. Okay? Do we like the pay? Is it adequate or is it unfair? Is it well paid? Is it secure? Do we have opportunities for promotion? Are there good opportunities for promotion, or is this a dead-end job? Okay, so I think job satisfaction corresponds to that liking element of Sternbergs' model. There's a very obvious construct in IO psychology called organizational commitment. Are we committed to the organization? And actually what it refers to is, do you feel as if your identity is linked to the organization? Is part of who I am being part of this organization? Okay? I'm a Raider. Okay? Part of who I am is being part of this community college. Okay? Is that part of who I am? Am I committed? Again, items from that type of survey, I'd be happy to spend the rest of my career with this organization. I really feel as if this organization's problems are my own. I feel like part of the family at my organization. This organization has a great deal of personal meaning for me. I enjoy discussing my organization with people outside it. People who are committed to the organization respond more affirmatively. They say yes to these things in a higher degree than those who aren't committed. Yeah, Frank.
Steve, does the literature suggest that there are any generational shifts? Do different generations have a different type of organizational commitment? Are we seeing any movement, particularly as organizations become more volatile, careers become more transient?
You know, I have not seen any particular data, but certainly the hypothesis is very pertinent and communicated. And again, I think what you're saying, and which is true, is the relationship between organizations and employees has changed. And in large part from the trend that we've seen in downsizing. And that employees can expect in their career at some point to be told by their organization, sorry, we don't have a job for you anymore. And I think employees are responding, and especially younger employees are saying, well, if that's the climate, then I better be prepared to be able to shift my employment. Okay, the model used to be you would go to work at an organization and stay there for your whole career and retire from the place that you started work at in your teens or your 20s. I have not seen any data, but there's a research idea that I'd like to pursue. Maybe we could pursue it together. So I think that's the case, and I think that's something to think about as young people. You know, I think the experience of feeling that you're part of something larger, like in an organization, is an important experience. I don't think you want to miss out on that. But at the same time, you have to look after your well-being. You have to sustain yourself. Question there.
Yeah, I would ask the question, a similar question, slightly different. It used to be, my parent, grandparents would look for the job they're going to retire from. Can we still do that? Are we still there?
It really depends on, you know, the company and the vocation. I think that it's less and less likely. Okay, if you go into the field of teaching, you might have that opportunity because there's something called tenure. although they're trying to get rid of tenure. I think that may be the case. Although there's advantages also to moving to a different job. Okay? Your best opportunity for a salary increase is when you're negotiating your starting salary. Your best opportunity for a real promotion is usually when you leave an organization and go to another. So, maybe you shouldn't be thinking about where you're going to retire from because you're losing some of your leverage. And that's something you should think of. Your career is an investment in yourself, and your labor is a commodity that you sell. No one is going to hire you out of goodwill towards you because they just like you because you're a nice person. They hire you because they make money from your labor. Okay? And that's fine. That's good. That's capitalism. I don't have a problem with that. But understand it. They're not doing you a favor by hiring you. They're making money from your labor. And you own your own career. The company doesn't own your career. Okay? So, good questions. Anytime you have them, let's go on. So the last component of Sternbergs' model that I'll talk about is work engagement. Okay? So being highly involved and passionate about the work and the organization. So these, again, are items from a survey on work engagement. I'm proud of the work that I do. My job inspires me. I feel happy when I'm working intensely. One of the most exciting things for me is getting involved with things happening in this organization. Being a member of this organization is exhilarating to me. Okay, this is the passion of work, and we can feel passion in our work, and we should. I feel bad for people who don't feel passion in their work. I think it's important. So as I apply this to Sternbergs, again, job satisfaction is the liking component, and work engagement is the passion component, and organization commitment is the commitment component. I got looking at this, though, and I thought, is it really totally the same? Okay? And so I changed some of the labels here because I thought, well, these labels of love don't fit. I kept the consummate love. Okay? If you're satisfied with your job, engaged in your work, and committed to the organization, that's a consummate love. And that's the place where we want to be in our work. Okay? But let's say you're satisfied with the job and you're engaged with the work, but maybe you're not committed to the organization. Here, the example I was thinking about was the attorney who loves being an attorney, is engaged in the work, but she really doesn't like her client. Okay, maybe a defense attorney who's defending someone who's kind of a scumbag. Okay, but even scumbags deserve a defense. Okay, that's our system, and it's a great system that we have. Okay, that person has what I call vocational love. They love the vocation of what they do. They love arguing in front of the courtroom. They get lost in that work. Okay, if they're in that flow state. Okay, but they're not really, they don't feel their identity comes from that person that they work from. Okay? What if you feel job satisfaction and organizational commitment, but you're not engaged in the work? This is what I call a temperate love. Okay, it's a moderate love. I think a lot of people fall into that. I like my work, and the organization's great, but I guess I just don't feel that passion in my work. Okay, and I changed what was called the fatuous love here. This is the one I had the most problem with, because I thought, well, what about those people? They're engaged in their work and they're committed to the organization, but they don't like their job. They're not satisfied with their job. Are those people foolish to have that job, to feel that love? I don't think so. I call that unrequited love. It's like, hey, I love the organization. I'm really committed to my work, I'm involved in my work, but, there's no opportunities for promotion. And I really don't like my coworkers. What are you going to do about that? Sometimes, you wait around and change, okay? And this is how love of work or a job is different than love of a person. Because it's more likely that the organization is going to change than an individual person, okay? If you're in love with a person who's a jerk, they're probably going to be a jerk their whole life, okay? But people come and go from organizations. Sometimes they're fired, sometimes they're promoted, sometimes the organization restructures and it has new policies, and you might, if you wait around, things might change and you might be satisfied with your job and have a consummate type of love, okay? Another way I thought is kind of different is, when there's not a real courting period with a job, right? You kind of get it, but it's kind of quick. You go in, you have an interview, you kind of feel it, but there's a pretty quick commitment. I mean, good thing we don't get into marriage that quickly. Maybe, I think we used to, but not anymore. It takes a while. We court, we date someone, maybe after a year or two, or maybe for some of you 5 or 6 or more, you say, okay, I'll commit to this person, okay? But in a job, the commitment from the employer side and the employee side is pretty quick. And there's a limited amount of information that you make that decision on. And so that's another reason why I think, we have to be prepared to move jobs. Because sometimes, what you see at first blush isn't what occurs, over the long term. And maybe that there's a reason to make a change for the employer and the employee. Because again, the employer, if you don't work out, they won't hesitate to fire you, okay? That's the law of the land. If you're not on contract, it's work at will. They don't have to give you a good reason to fire you. If you don't work out, you're fired. And you have that same right as an employee, but you have to be in a position in your career to be able to exercise that option. And the more you manage your career, the more likely you're going to get it. So how do you find a job that you love? I'm going to have to go quickly through this. Well, one thing, use career guidance services. We've got great services here at GRCC that I wonder how many of you have used. Okay, over in the Student Center, I'll see if I can get my link to work here. We've got the counseling and career services. And so they will give you tests to help you understand what type of vocation am I most interested in. Okay, they even have personality tests that you can take to understand yourself better. It's important to understand yourself to know where do you fit, what vocation fits me the best. You're going to be investing a lot of your time and your money as you proceed in your education and in your career. Do it in a way that you're very informed. These are services that are available to you right now as a student. Okay? And we also have services like this that are available to prospective students and the public at large. So over in Sneeden Hall, we have our career development services. And for example, they do workshops about every month, this career directions workshop, where they'll give you tests and help you to learn about what vocation fits me. And so these are services that you should avail yourself to, because it's a long path you're going down and you want to, get in the right direction. These are services that we're all paying for through our taxes, through your tuition. You've paid for these services. Take advantage of them. Use them. Okay? Other things that we should do to find a career. One of the biggest things you need to do is network. Okay? I had a colleague recently who lost his job, And to me, he exemplified getting a job being his job. He took on full-time job getting a job. He emailed every colleague that he knew that he used to work with, and he got on our calendars, and he met with us, and he face-to-face, and left his individual business card. Okay, so if you're unemployed, go out and get yourself a business card. And go out to the people that you know and sit down with them and say, I'm looking for a job in this area. Okay? Do you know of any work? Can you tell me of any work? What can you do? Okay? And, you know, this was a colleague that I could identify with. Okay? Because, you know, there but for the grace of God go I. You know, maybe I could be out of work at any time, and I would want him to be as considerate to me. And so, you know, I know through this process he found temporary work that filled in the gap, and he got a permanent job within 2 months. Okay? But he set an appointment with everybody he knew. He followed up with email. He took it upon himself to full-time look for a job. And I think there's something psychological to that. You need to be active and doing things, because if you're not, then people will say, they can sense it. You know, it's like a dog who can smell fear. Employers can smell if you're not serious or active or working, okay? You also need to cultivate good references. And this is something across your whole career, is that you should cultivate good references. So as my dad told me, and I listened to him, never burn any bridges, okay? Let's say, you know, you've got a job and you didn't like how things worked out. You might be tempted to say, you know, take this job and shove it. Bad idea, because you never know. You never know when they're just going to call back. And this happens more and more as you advance in your career. They're not just going to look at the people on your resume that you say are references. They're going to call people at the organization and say, hey, you know, they call at Central Michigan. What do you think of Steve Wagner? Okay. Well, fortunately, I, had good relationships with people, and I'm confident, and get good references from people I never expected to get good references from. Okay? But also cultivate them as a student. If you want to go to graduate school, if you want to get a job, who are your references? They're most often your professors. Okay, so if you're just showing up to work or to class and you're an anonymous student, and maybe half the time you don't show up, who's your reference? Okay, you should be treating your professors as a potential reference that you're going to use to get into grad school, to use to get a job. They'll do that for you. I don't know how many letters of recommendation I've written in my career. I imagine it's approaching the thousands, okay, that I've written for other people. Students who come to me and say, Steve, would you be a reference for me? Okay, not for thousands of people, but usually people, when they apply for a job or apply for graduate school, they're applying for 20, 30 schools sometimes. And I type up the letters, send them out. Okay, so cultivate good references. Use multiple search tools. There's great resources available to you. Michigan Works, the internet. You know, there's a new domain called .jobs. So if you go to michigan.us.jobs, it lists the jobs in Michigan, and you can go to jobs just in Grand Rapids. And I think this is going to be big as it goes forward. Or it's for actually specific vocations. So you can go to nurses.jobs, and it'll show you all the nursing jobs in the country, and then you can break it down by region. Okay? But there's monster.com, there's specific organizations. If you want to find out what jobs are there at GRCC, you can go to Human Resources and get a list of those jobs. Use the job fairs. Yes? Yes. Yeah, well, I would always strive for 3. And if I didn't have 3, I would go ask a third. I would go to my professor, who I got an A or a B in, and I would say, you know, Dr. Wagner, I know you might not know me a lot, but, you know, I was a good student. I did well in your class. Would you be a reference for me? Okay? So I would strive to get that third reference, because in some places it's just going to be a disqualifier. With the volume of resumes that people are receiving, that's just one thing we could say, oh, they don't have 3, it's out. Well, certainly, there's an interesting, you know, risk in references, okay? And even like, you know, I would never agree to give a reference for someone I couldn't give a good reference to. And sometimes, you know, when you're in a position, you'll get a call and say, you know, well, could you give me a reference for this person? And you don't want to say anything bad about someone because they can sue you. And so, you know, if I don't have anything good to say to someone, you don't say anything at all. Say, well, you could talk to HR and they could verify the person's employment. And there's a subtext to that saying, I'm not going to say anything. And perhaps, you know, some people may refuse, you know, will say, I'm in a position where I can't give you a reference because maybe there's a conflict of interest. Again, I wouldn't be comfortable just going with 2. I would find a third. Maybe, you know, someone at your place of worship, your neighbor, who you know, have them be a reference for you. If it's a character reference, I would seek that out. I wouldn't want to put myself at that disadvantage of, again, if there's 100 resumes and they've got to get through them and they've got to whittle them down somehow, if you don't have 3 references, that's an easy way of doing it. I wouldn't want to be in that position. Finally, cold call. Find those places that you want to work. Do you want to work at Google? Wouldn't it be cool to work at Google? Okay, I forget what's the motto of Google. Something about eliminating evil from the world or doing good. I mean, it's just like this really neat. I mean, who wouldn't want to work at Google? Okay? Why not give it a shot? I mean, if you want to find a job that you love, then find some place that you really love, okay? Other things, okay, when you're searching for a job, cultivate resilience. You need to have a stick-to-itness. You need to be able to bounce back from rejection, okay? So again, approach the job search as a learning goal rather than a performance goal. A learning goal means I'm going to learn something from this experience. A performance goal means if I don't succeed, I'm a failure. Okay? Don't take that approach because you're going to have to face rejection. Overcome irrationally negative interpretations of non-responsive employers. Oh, complicated sentence. But here's what it is. You send in your resume and you don't hear back. You're waiting by the phone for a call. Isn't this like love? And they don't call. And months go by and they don't call. And what do you say to yourself? You say, oh, I must really stink. Okay, nobody's going to hire me. That's irrational. Okay? It has nothing to do with you. It has to do with they've got 1,000 applications and maybe they're disorganized. It has nothing to do with you, but you're going to beat yourself down if you're not careful. So listen to yourself if you say those things to yourself and say, no. That's not the truth, okay? I am qualified. I am good. It's a bad economy. I'm going to persevere. I'm going to be resilient. Respond to adversity by practice calming and focusing. Yeah, you're going to have those points where you're breaking down. I've sent out 100 applications. I haven't got any response. I'm going to hyperventilate. Take time. Breathe deep, okay? Maybe with a paper bag. Focus. Maybe have a mantra to yourself, Okay, I will be successful. I will be successful. Focus. Look for opportunities to be responsible and productive. Work in your family, work in your community. Be industrious. Okay, again, the employer can smell it like a dog smells fear. So practice being industrious. Practice being the type of person that they want to hire. And avoid pessimistic people. Okay? We all have people who act like Eeyore in our life. Oh. Well, they're fine. And people like that are a good part of the fabric of life. But I don't want to be around them while I'm searching for a job. Okay? I want to be around confident people. Landing the job that you'll love. Okay? First and last impressions are influential. We know this. Okay? Your cover letter, your resume should be accurate, free of typos, and appropriate for the job that you're seeking. Again, look for workshops. My office does workshops for student employees, for staff, and if there's openings, we'll take people from the community. Okay? Just give us a call. Say, hey, can we be in that resume workshop? There's other workshops on campus. Get it down, get it right, because that's the first thing they're going to see. And if you've got typos all over your cover letter and there's not a complete sentence in there, they're not going to hire you. Okay? So do you wonder why your comp class matters to your career? It matters a lot to your career because it might be the first impression that employer has of you. Dress for success. You should always, when you go in for an interview, dress one level above what the typical way of dressing in that environment is. Okay? So if you're going to, an oil change place, you're not going to wear a tie to go in for your interview, but you should wear your clean dickies, okay? Not the oil-stained ones, okay? One level up for success. Smile and make eye contact. People they infer things from your body language for valid or invalid reasons, okay? And everybody in HR, not everybody, I shouldn't say that. A lot of people in HR think that they can read body language even if they can't, okay? So you need to project a body language of confidence, okay? Use a firm handshake. This is one I saw a study from recently, that an actual experiment where they had people give different types of handshakes, the firm handshake, the wet fish, okay? And yeah, it matters. What was interesting is it mattered even more for women. Women out there give a firm handshake, okay? It influences hiring decisions. Send thank you cards or thank you emails afterwards. And what I recommend is take down little notes of your interactions with people and put them in your thank you cards. If you went out to lunch with someone and said, hey, thanks for taking me out for Qdoba. Those burritos were great. Okay? If you heard about someone's, childhood on the tobacco farm, say that was really interesting because it shows that you were paying attention and that you thought that person was worthwhile enough for you to remember something specific about your interaction with them. Do your homework before the interview. Get on the website, find out what is the strategy of this organization. What is the language of this organization? Use the words of that organization in your interaction with those people. You can find out a lot by doing your homework. So understand the organization. Identify who will be involved in the selection process if you can ahead of time. Remember their names so that when you interact with them, you can say, thanks, Judy, for asking me that question. Okay? People love to hear their names. If you know the people's names that and write a cheat sheet. Okay, you don't have to memorize it. Write it down on your notes right in front of you. Okay? Have a good interview. You start this by listening carefully. You can paraphrase what they say to you in the question. You can invite clarification if necessary. Some of these interview questions they'll ask in 3 parts. oh, you can't remember it all. Say, well, could you remind me again what that question was? This is what I heard. They'll ask you again, okay? Respond thoughtfully. Start with a pause to reflect and gather your thoughts, okay? Barack Obama's great at this, if you ever saw those debates. He would always stop and pause and think, and then he would respond, okay? But our first reaction in an interview is to just start talking, okay? Be disciplined. Calm it down. Think, okay? Don't just answer the question. They're not looking for just an answer. They want a response. It should be a conversation. They want you to elaborate. Okay? So fill that conversation, that interview with you talking. Provide examples of your past behavior. Don't talk in broad generalities. I'm a people person. How many people are people persons? Everybody's a people person. I don't care if you think you're a people person. What did you do that helped people interact? Avoid negative characterizations of others. It never pays to badmouth your old boss or your old coworkers, even if they deserve it in your mind. It's not going to help you get that job. The impression that they're going to get is that this person's a sour apple. And if they talk bad about them, they're going to talk bad about me. They're going to be a problem employee. Why would I want to hire that type of person? I wouldn't. Okay, never talk bad about a former employer. Prepare questions to ask the interviewer. They're going to judge you on the questions you ask them. Okay? So for example, you might ask, what are the biggest challenges facing the organization right now? That gives you a great in to say, hey, I've got strengths to address those challenges. I'm the right person for you. Okay? To land a job, cultivate confidence. You need to be confident. In love, you need to be confident, right? We know that. How do you do this? Inventory all your successes that you've had in life. Think back, when have I been successful? Recall the details of each success. Reflect how it felt to be success. This is the method of acting, okay? Method acting, where you kind of go back in your mind and you recall an emotion. You can do this for a job interview. Think of a time when you felt strong and confident. Then you will be strong and confident. Remember that you're still that person who succeeded. Practice the body language of confidence. Get in front of the mirror. Get your posture right. Practice eye contact. Have an assured smile. Get a pep talk from someone that you trust. Thriving in the job that you love. When you got your job, how do you stick and keep that consummate kind of love? Okay? First of all, make friends at work. Okay? So there's a really neat book by Tom Rath called Vital Friends. And he works at Gallup, which is a big polling. And he does neat stuff on the impact of having friends at work. So people with a best friend at work are more likely to have fun on the job, to innovate and share ideas, to feel informed, to get more done in less time. So work and friendship don't have to be divorced from each other. They should be part. We should have good friends at work. Make your work meaningful, okay? Explore the impact of your work. Who do I affect in the work that I do? You might be surprised if you listed out the names and you thought about the impact. If you're feeling like your work doesn't have a lot of meaning, go through that exercise. Connect your job to the organization's mission and strategy. How do I impact where this organization is going? Seek feedback. It might be from other people, or it might just be, how often do I respond to emails on time? On time being 24 hours, okay? 24-hour rule. That's what I strive for. I think a lot of people strive for that. How often do I meet that? I should measure that, seek that feedback, and continually try and improve, okay? To thrive in your job, you should cultivate enthusiasm as a state of mind. Okay? How do we do this? This comes from a book by Daniel Pink called Drive. It's all on motivation. Okay? And one aspect of motivation is autonomy. We should try and control our environment. It's more motivating when we do this. So we should have control over our technique at work. Okay? Suggest different ways of doing things. If, again, there's going to be times where, you can't do this, okay? For safety reasons, there might be a prescribed way to do a certain job, okay? But if you can have autonomy, use it, okay? Manage your time. Manage the people that you work with. Try to continually grow in your mastery, okay? So our improvement in skills is an asymptote, okay? Here's a mathematical term, okay? It's a curve. What's interesting here is the better and better we get at something, the smaller and smaller our improvements are over time. But people who are experts remain satisfied with those small improvements. What little improvement can you make every day in your work? To be an expert requires a long-term discipline commitment, 10 years or so, okay? So be disciplined and try to become an expert in something, okay? Find a purpose, okay? And there's a video, I'm going to skip over this, but I would have showed this. It talks about what is your sentence, okay? Everybody should be defined by a sentence. There's a famous person, Claire Luce Booth. She was one of our first female congresswomen. And she went to President Kennedy, and she asked him, what is your sentence? Okay? Abraham Lincoln's sentence was, he kept the Union together and freed slaves. Okay? But Kennedy was all over the place. What was his sentence? What's your sentence? What's your purpose in life? Okay? And how are you connected to something bigger than you? Okay, so summary, IO psychology, important discipline. It enhances the quality of life for people and the productivity of organizations. Yes, you can love your job, and you should. You'll be happier in life. Actually, if we look at job satisfaction and work engagement and organizational commitment, they're all strongly related to life satisfaction. You'll be happier in life. Find, land, and thrive a job you love by cultivating these states of mind. These are things that you can influence, okay? Be resilient, be confident, and show enthusiasm. I think if you do those things, you will find the job that you'll love. You can land it, and you will thrive in it. Okay? So that's it. Any questions? Yeah, question. Yeah, and that may be, again, my age showing. So it may be emailing your resume. But again, the trick of that is finding who to email. Okay? Our first default is always going to be to email human resources. And that may not be the appropriate person to cold call. And so it starts with doing your homework. Who is the manager in that division that you want to work for? If you hunt around, you'll be able to find that person, send that person a cover letter and a resume, and say, I think you're doing exciting things in that unit. I've read about this, I've seen this, I've heard it from other people. I think I'd be a good employee for you. And if you look at my resume, I think you'll agree. Question? I think it depends on the company. I think there's many companies that are not all that technology savvy. and where paper matters. And I think paper is more significant. Yeah. I think it's changing. I think that email is becoming more and more acceptable, and that people are noticing that, hey, I don't need paper, and in some areas, paper is looked at as a bad thing. It's like, oh, you're killing a tree. So, you might, again, in your homework, figure out, how important is that to that company. If, sustainability is big on their stuff, they might appreciate an email over paper. But I think you're right that a paper can be more substantial. It's there in front of, it's so easy just to hit delete or not even open that email. Where if you get the paper, you're going to open it up. This one and over here? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and I would say follow up. Don't be afraid to follow up. I see people who send it out and they say, I haven't heard anything. I don't want to call them back. Call them back. Bug them. When I applied to Sears, I bugged them for about 3 months straight. And it told them that I was genuinely interested in their job. And they probably just wanted to stop getting my letters and my emails, and they finally said, okay, come, stop bugging us, we'll give you the job. Okay, you had a question.
About going to what you said once you land that interview, and as far as responding to the question, is that try to keep those questions simple and short as possible?
No, I would say no. I would not keep my responses simple and short. I would elaborate on my responses. I would give examples from my behavior. You want to keep it relevant and addressing the question, but I think it's a mistake to be too brief. When you've got the floor, put on a show and give them a thorough answer, show them your enthusiasm, show them your personality, give them multiple examples. And so I would not be brief and simple and direct in my answers. I would elaborate. Well, I think we have to be sensitive to either body language or, you can kind of sometimes tell, if they roll their eyes when you walk in the door, that's too much. Okay? You're like, oh, this person again. You can tell. They're like, ugh, But I think people more often make the opposite mistake. Okay? And it's not that the people in human resources aren't trying, that they're doing a good job. They're inundated with resumes, and that's where I think don't apply for jobs you're not qualified for. And you can make that judgment, and maybe you say, hey, I'm desperate, I need a job. Okay, I understand that, but it's a waste of time. It's a waste of your energy. It's a waste of HR's energy, and you wouldn't be good in that job anyway. So I would say, err on the side of bugging them.
Speaking of resumes, it seems today's series to have a very short, focused resume. Is that really true? I mean, how short, long, is there a magic formula for how the resume should be shaped?
It really depends on the job. It depends on the job. And so, I have one resume, what they call a curriculum vitae, that's 13 pages long. that I send out. That's, if I was going for an academic job, because it lists every publication, every presentation, every graduate student I worked with, every class I ever taught, and they expect that, and the thicker it is, the more impressive you are. For most industry types of jobs, 1 to 2 pages is what they're looking for. And you don't have to feel like you have to put every job you ever had on your resume. I don't put down that I was a cook at McDonald's, or I was a dormitory attendant, or even that I was a graduate assistant, okay? I start with my job at Sears and go on from there. If they want to know about what it was like to be a cook at Big Boy, I'll tell them, but they want to know that about me. So 1 to 2 is probably the most common, but it's going to depend. As you go for higher level jobs, you're going to want more pages to your resume. Yeah. Well, when I started, I listed everything. You know, when I was, going from McDonald's to Big Boy, I put down that I mowed lawns for my neighbor. And I talked about that in my interview. And so, and I think that people beginning their career often think, oh, I don't have experience. Okay, I can't get in without experience. You're not counting your experiences well enough. Okay? And you should be looking for experiences. So working in student government, that's something you can put down on your resume. Volunteering at the soup kitchen, I put that down on my resume. Some classes that I had, if I had a big project that I did, I would put that down, okay? That I learned about interviewing people in my human resources class. And that's why you should hire me as a human resource assistant. If you should be getting those kinds of experiences in college and putting them on your resume for your first major job. So you've got to look at your experiences broadly when you're starting out. Great questions. Other questions? We've got time for more. Yeah. Well, I would take that on its word. If they say, don't call us, we'll call you, I would say, okay. But I would also say, there's plenty of fish in the sea. Okay? Just like your mom might have told you, if some person didn't treat you right. Okay? There's plenty of fish in the sea. And if they don't call you back, they're lost. And so, and again, don't take it personally. It's not, for most of these people, it's not personal. They don't know you. They've never seen you. It's not, and it's not even that they don't care. It's that they got too many other things happening. But very often, we'll take it personally. We'll think, oh man, they must really not like me. And I must really stink. You're not even on the radar screen. Okay? And that's nothing bad. Okay? There's 5 billion people in the world. You don't have to be on the radar screen. Other questions? No? Great. Well, I thank you for having me out. I appreciate it.
Just to let you know before you rush out the door, a couple of things.